I'm Sarah Seidner, and this is CNN Tonight on a very big news night. Former President Donald Trump's Mar-A-Lago home in Florida has been searched by the FBI. Trump confirmed it himself tonight. Three sources tell our Sarah Murray and Kristen Holmes it was related to the handling of presidential documents, including classified documents. Those documents may have been brought to Mar-A-Lago when Donald Trump left the White House. In order to get a search warrant like this, prosecutors have to establish probable cause that a crime was committed. So this is a very big deal. Make no mistake about it. Former President Trump has already blasted the move, claiming, as he often does, political persecution and a witch hunt. In a statement released tonight, he says, quote, "These are dark times for our nation as my beautiful home, Mar-A-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, is currently under siege, raided, and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before. After working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. Such an assault could only take place in broken third world countries. They even broke into my safe." CNN has learned Donald Trump was not in Florida when the FBI closed in on his home. He was at Trump Tower here in New York City. I am joined now by CNN political analyst Maggie Haberman, a senior political correspondent for the New York Times and the author of the upcoming book, Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America, which goes on sale in October. Also with us, former White House Communication Director Alyssa Farah Griffin and former federal prosecutor Shan Wu. The president says this has never happened to someone. The former president says it's never happened to a president before. Of course, it hasn't, because we've never had a president in this position before. I mean, we can say that, right, Shan? Can we talk about, this search and how far up the chain that the FBI would have had to have gone to get this search warrant? The president is calling it a raid and unfair, but the FBI has to go through a process to be able to do this, correct?
That's right. As you said, there has to be probable cause, and for the search warrant, it's got to go before a judge. So a judge has to agree with the evidence that they set forth. And for something like this, as sensitive as you could possibly imagine at the Justice Department, that's got to go to the highest levels. Garland has to know about it, has to give a green light, and certainly the head of the FBI, same situation. They have to know about it. They have to give the green light.
Can you give us a sense of what you think this might be all about? Now, I know this is an educated guess, but from what we know, from what we have heard in the past, and from some of the reporting that Maggie here has done herself, what might this be all about?
Well, it sounds like from the reporting that it's about the records. And in a sense, this is low-hanging fruit for the Justice Department. It's very easy to go look to see what other records there are, and that's sort of a prima facie violation. It's not superly legal, difficult in terms of understanding it. They don't have to run it through ages of OLC analysis, Office of Legal Counsel analysis. So it's kind of low-hanging fruit. So it's a little bit in line with Garland's approach, which is methodical. And this is something that's sort of a no-brainer. Let's go see what we find there.
Okay, apparently there have been, from our reporting, 15 boxes that have been taken out. Maggie, I want to talk to you because you've been doing a lot of reporting on this, documents being torn up and flushed down the toilet, which a lot of people sort of laughed at, but it really isn't funny. Ultimately, the former president is here in New York. The FBI is there at his house in Florida. Why do you think it was done this way? Do you think it was calculated? And how dangerous may it be if he would have known that all this is going on beforehand?
It's hard to speak to danger because we don't really know what we're talking about. We don't know whether he, say, held on to documents that were supposed to have been returned to NARA. We don't know if there's additional information that they were seeking because we really don't know a lot about or anything about the underlying search warrant material. So there's a lot of unknowns. There are a lot of people who are speculating on both sides of this issue, those who are against Donald Trump and his supporters, about what this means. And there's a ton we don't know yet. What we do know is at least a portion of this, if not all, does relate to these boxes. Now, these boxes were supposed to have been returned. The fact that this happened this way indicates stuff was not entirely returned. The fact that it took place when Trump was not there is certainly of note. I mean, it was the first thing that I thought about because we know that he has been up here for the summer at his club in Bedminster. He's also expected to be deposed by the New York Attorney General in the coming days, and I think that that has been occupying his time as well. Did it mean that he was not there to, potentially interfere, or were they worried about that? I think it avoided the question of the FBI having to go in and maybe be stopped by the Secret Service or by anybody else who was around a sitting president who would not be there if he was not there. And so beyond that, There is a whole lot we don't know tonight. It would be good if everybody would just wait until we know. I know that's not how anybody does anything these days, but there is a ton we don't know yet. But we do know this is unprecedented. This is a remarkable situation. It is a former president. That is not something that is done lightly, where there is going to be a search warrant executed this way. There's no way that Merrick Garland is doing this lightly. It's hard to imagine that he would not know about it. I also just want to note that the FBI director, Chris Wray, was appointed by Donald Trump.
Right. He is a Trump appointee. Yep. You talked about how everyone is speculating. And Alyssa, I know that you've been looking at the folks on the conservative side who are supporters of Donald Trump. How are they taking this? What are they saying? Because Trump has already started the rhetoric that he's been saying a long time, a witch hunt, they're after me, deep state, et cetera, et cetera. What are you seeing?
Yeah, to be honest, the rhetoric from the right is already extremely heated and inflammatory, and already from elected officials, saying how unprecedented this is. Marco Rubio put out a very strongly worded statement, which I was a bit surprised by. But I want to say one thing, one that is in the speculation space and something that's not. This indicates the specificity of knowing where to look. His personal office, his safe, to me says somebody pointed to it. This leads me to believe somebody is cooperating who has knowledge of Donald Trump's recent operations within Mar-A-Lago. Who that is, I could not tell you. Now, something I could say that's not speculation is these documents that were supposed to be archived, many of them were classified. This has been reported previously. This is not a small crime. As a former TSSCI security clearance holder, something that's top secret is considered to pose a grave national security risk if it's in the wrong hands. Mar-a-Lago, as has previously reported, has been a target of spies, of espionage. You cannot just take highly classified documents and keep them in your personal office. That's a very serious offense. And then the final thing I would say is getting into Donald Trump's head, the kind of things he would want to preserve. I couldn't even begin to speculate what kind of classified documents that could pose a serious risk to the U.S. if they got out.
Maggie, can I ask you about the potential that there is, nothing there? 15 boxes, as you said, someone may have pointed to where this was and what they think might be in there, but we know from your reporting that some things have been destroyed. So how do we know a bunch of stuff hasn't been destroyed?
And that's really where this all comes down to, is that basically everybody keeps saying around Trump, why is everybody assuming the worst? Well, they're assuming the worst in large part because of things like the shredding of documents and in some cases the flushing of paper that were handwritten notes on it and so forth. That we don't know what this is, but there is a reason to assume, again, just based on the fact that a judge signed off on this search warrant, that there was something significant there. Now, it depends on what it is. Is it something that, his supporters would recognize as major? I don't know. I do know that his folks, I shouldn't say his folks, some of his folks, certainly not all, and certainly him, have a long-standing habit of conflating legal problems with PR problems. And at the moment, they are treating this like it's a PR problem. But it's a legal problem. Now, it may not be a consequential legal problem. We don't know what that looks like. I have no idea where this is going to result. We have seen investigations of people around Trump fizzle. We have seen investigations of people around Trump result in guilty pleas or convictions. So I have no idea whether this is going to be anything. Obviously, an indictment of a former president, should that be where this was leading, will not be done lightly. But whether it is going to be something that his supporters see as quote unquote sufficient, I think is the question. I'm already hearing from people around Trump, to Alyssa's point, if this is quote unquote nothing, and define nothing, but if this is nothing, it's going to rip the country apart. It may be headed in that direction regardless, but I think that the argument from the DOJ would be we have to follow the law.
You said either legal problem or PR problem, depending on how you want to parse this. Luckily, we have a former federal prosecutor sitting here with us. As a legal problem, how big of a legal problem might this be? Because Maggie's reporting that things were shredded and flushed down the toilet. How big of a problem could this be for Donald Trump? What kind of charges might he face if they find something?
Well, in addition to the mishandling of the classified information, there could be destruction of government property as well. So I think the thing that really strikes me about this is just how simple of a case it could be to prove. And that's why I refer to it as low-hanging fruit. I mean, if they find some of the boxes and documents are still there, that's really the end of the story. And I think that is the real distinction here between a lot of the other probes that are going on. So I think it's sort of an open and shut case, depending on what they find. Of course, we're focusing on physical documents. Trump doesn't seem big on using the internet that much necessarily, or emails. But obviously, there could be digital records as well involved here. And the fact that they are in there, in his residence, looking at his belongings, frankly, that's enormously intrusive, and it gives them the opportunity to find all sorts of things. There is something called the plain view doctrine, which is if you're there legitimately, anything else you see, you're legitimately able to look at and take if you need to.
Can I just stop and just take a breath real quick? A former president's home has been searched now by a number of FBI agents. When you look at this in the view of sort of 30,000 feet and history, Maggie, I'll start with you. How big of a moment is this? Is this a moment we are all going to remember?
Yes, we're all going to remember being together on this night, because this is a night where you are going to remember where you were. Even if this doesn't end up ultimately leading to, where Trump's critics and political opponents, and I don't mean in the White House, but I mean Democrats, some Democrats hope it would go. It's still a remarkable moment. We have seen 6 years of norms shattered, of ongoing investigations of a sitting president that he made more extensive by the fact that he kept trying to get his arms around the Mueller investigation. We saw not one, but two impeachments. Then we have had the January 6th investigations. And yet, none of that led to this point until now. I do wonder, and we have not raised this yet, we've talked about sort of the confines of this investigation, but I do wonder, would we be seeing this? Would there be a willingness to go forward the same way? Again, absent knowing what they're looking for, had January 6th not happened? And I think you're going to hear a lot of people asking that question, because we know there are already two sitting grand juries. And actually, I think there's a third investigation into the NARA documents.
And just real quick, I'd say to the point that Maggie made, I hope that DOJ went about this meticulously and that there is a there, because if not, it will tear the country apart. You are seeing it in the rhetoric already that's coming out from my fellow Republicans, and I'm really hoping that this was done for a credible reason and it goes somewhere.
Alyssa, Maggie, Shannon, we're going to be back. We have so much more to talk about, much more to come on what the FBI search at Mar-A-Lago could mean for former President Donald Trump. The question on everybody's mind, what might all of this mean for him, particularly when it comes to potential criminal exposure? We're right back with more analysis coming up next.